Yo, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. It's KT, your friendly neighborhood personal trainer. In today's video, we're going to cover the upper body foundational movements. So in the previous video, we went over the lower body foundational movements. I wanted to make sure I covered upper body as well. Luckily for us, upper body only has two foundational movements. Either you're doing a push, whether that's straight out, up, or from the ground up, or you're doing a pull, again, whether you're pulling upwards, horizontally, or vertically from the ground. The only movement in upper body movements that is similar to lower body movements is the hinge. This is why the hinge is one of the most important movements, because you use them in lower body motions and upper body motions. So as a reminder, the hinge is the one where we're kind of pushing the hips back to bend over. So as I go over these motions, you'll see why that plays an important factor in your upper body foundational movements. Besides the hinge, the only other thing to worry about when you're doing upper body movements is your spine and your pelvis. You want to make sure that you're keeping your pelvis evenly tilted, so not too back and then not too up. You want to have a nice neutral spine and a nice neutral pelvis. So let's get into what those motions are going to look like. Okay, so let's start with the overhead press, because that's going to be one of the important ones. So when you do an overhead press, I'll do this from a side view. Actually, I'll do it from this side so that this camera can catch this as well. So you're doing an overhead press. First thing you want to do is get your shoulders nice and aligned here. So you don't want to come too forward this way. You don't want to come too back either. You kind of want it to just be parallel right across the chest. So just imagine. Hope you can kind of tell in this black shirt I'm wearing. I probably should have chose a different attire for this, but yeah, so you want your shoulders like so. So not too far back, not too far up, just nice and aligned with your body. Once you get into that position, this is where that pelvic tilt I was talking about comes into handy. So check it from the back camera. So you don't want to have your back like so when you're pushed up. So you have like all this space here. You can kind of imagine if you were going against a wall, you should be able to barely get your hand through that space for that to be correct. So if you have too much of a tilt and you can get your two arms through that space, then you probably are tilting a little too much. Now, obviously, if you got more junk in the trunk, then this doesn't apply to you because you're not sure you're going to be further off of the wall, but you get what I'm trying to go here. So keep that tilt. Just imagine that you're kind of pressing your tilt forward. So instead of having your hips tilted downwards or having your hips tilted way too far to where you're just have this whole arch here, you want to just imagine you tilting your tilt towards yourself, tilting your pelvis towards yourself, and then embrace your core. That's going to help you maintain that stability in the spine and in the pelvis. And then we're just going to push straight up. Again, we don't want to completely lock out those joints. You want to keep like a slight bend in the elbow. Then you want to come down to that same parallel position across the shoulders, and we're going to push back up. So I'll go around in some circles here so we can kind of get the whole feel of this position. So this is how we're going to work the shoulders. So then whether you're doing a press this way or you're pressing this way, maybe you're doing like an Arnold press, but that position is going to be the same. If you're doing a single arm press, any kind of overhead press, that is what that's going to look like. Second thing we're going to is the pull that comes with that hinge. So do that from this position. So you're still going to want to have that hip placement that we talked about in the lower body video. From there, a nice bend in the knees, because we don't want them locked out as they're bending over. We want to keep a nice slight light bend in those knees. And then again, we're not squatting, so once you get that bend, you're going to keep that angle. All you're going to do is push the hips back. Once you get into that position, you can imagine yourself holding a few weights, and then you're going to row up. So you're going to row here. You can even turn your hands and do an underhand row. You can even do vertical and do a row this way. The other important thing in this is going to be the rounding of your back. So just like in that hinge video, you want to keep your chest up and your shoulders back so that your back isn't rounded. So you don't want to be here with this nice round we see in the back and then trying to do this lower. That's going to put a lot of pressure on the lower back, and that's going to mess it up. So what you want to do instead is, again, bring that chest forward, bring those shoulders back, really straighten out that spine, and then we can get into this row position. Really squeeze the scapula blades together. So there we have the overhead press and a pull. So then those same motions are going to translate into any standing position as well. So if you're doing a chest press, for example, or you're using cables and doing a chest press, our hands are going to be here. Either you're going to be seated in a seat, you're going to be lying down on your back, whatever position you're in. But that same thing is going to happen. So you're going to want to push. You're going to want to keep that spine neutral. Keep that pelvis tilted down, unless you're doing a bench press, but we'll get into that into another video. But here, and you just want to just push forward. Really imagine that you're engaging those chest muscles, and then draw it back. And here you can kind of play with the shoulder motion, because some people having their hands up like this obviously might put too much pressure on that shoulder, that deltoid. So what you want to do is kind of drop the shoulders down a little bit. You never want to have your shoulders raised up when you're doing any kind of motion. Relax those shoulders. You drop the elbows down a little bit so you get more of this 45-degree angle as opposed to a 90-degree angle when you're doing the push. So for me personally, I find this to be a little more comfortable dropping those shoulders. It puts less pressure on the shoulders, so you're less likely to come into shoulder tears, rotator cuff tears, and things like that. Same with your pull motion. So maybe you're standing doing like a cable pull. So you might want to bend your knees a little bit to kind of get yourself grounded. Maybe you're holding 2 cables, maybe you're just holding 1. And here you're going to pull back, really squeeze, pull back, really squeeze. So again, trying to keep that position very neutral as we're doing this pull motion. So they're pretty much the same. Whether you're pulling or it's more so about the wrist placement, arm placement, but you get my drift there. So that is the push, the pull, and the overhead press. The last thing I'm going to cover is the push up, because this is something that I also see people do a different or improper form with. And whether you're doing a full push-up or a modified push-up where you're on your knees, or whether you can go all the way down to the floor or not, this form is never going to change. So we're going to knock the camera down to the floor so we can go over that one. Okay, so when you're doing a push-up, whether you're going modified version or a standard version, I'm going to cover standard first, and then we'll get into modified. First thing you want to do is have your arms directly underneath those shoulders, okay? So we'll get into that position. From there, then you want to come up. So this is the first issue that I find people do, is they're doing this motion here. So see, notice that my hips are dropped, and then I'm trying to do this here. Okay, that is improper. So you want to keep those hips elevated. You want to pretend you're a table. Someone's going to sit on you. So you don't want to be here and then have somebody sit on you, because then you're going to collapse. You got to have some foundation, have some stability in that core, in those arms, and those legs. From there, you want to start to bend the elbow. So another thing I'll see people do is, instead of bending the elbows, they're just doing this. So again, not really working anything with the arms. So you want to actually bend those elbows, start going down as far as you can. So if you can't touch the floor like so, and come back up, that's fine. Go down as far as you can comfortably in a proper form, and then you kind of push back up through that ground. So then an issue I'll see with modified, for example, is that people will start here and then they'll just start pushing like so. That's going to be incorrect as well. So what you're going to want to do is shift your hands forward. You're also going to want to shift your hips forward like so. So you're kind of getting this like slope. Imagine someone's like sliding down your back. And then from there, same thing. It's down as far as you can, up as you can. So that's putting more of the pressure, more of the work on the muscles that's supposed to be working, as opposed to when you're like this. Now you're not really getting too much of that muscle group getting the work. So shift the hips forward, and then you want to push down. And then you can find yourself in that same position, whether you're doing a wall push-up or any other kind of push-up. So the thing there is to make sure that your hips stay in that nice neutral spine. You don't want to dip too much. You want to make sure that those shoulders are getting the bend they need so that you can actually work out that chest when you're doing your push-up motion. Whether you're doing a close grip, triangle, whatever variation of push-up you're doing, that form will take you through all the motions. So that pretty much covers upper body. So very simple and straightforward. Overhead press, push, pull, and the importance of hinging when you're doing like a bent over row, for example. The importance of maintaining a straight spine and keeping that pelvis neutral instead of tilted anterior posteriorly. That's going to be important when doing an overhead press or any kind of chest press. And once you can get those bases down, you can pretty much do any variation of any chest, shoulder, tricep, any upper body movement. Congratulations, that covers that video. So you can now find yourself to be on your step towards being an expert when it comes to upper body movements. If you found this video to be helpful, then make sure you give that a like. If you would like to see more content from me, whether it's things like this as far as tutorials, whether it's workout videos so that you can do something at home, whether it's something educational that you read about somewhere you want to learn deeper topics about, then feel free to subscribe to my channel to hear more about those. My comment sections are always open, so you can feel free to drop any suggestions on things that you want to learn about. If you found this video to be helpful, then please share it with a friend. And per usual, don't forget to crush it, and we'll see you in the next one.